Okay, folks, we are live because live is awesome.
This beer looks wonderful.
You're shopping for beer while I'm trying to get the podcast going. All right. We're getting
You're the one
started
that
a
was
little
playing
later
with
than usual.
cables and wires for hours.
Cables and wires, all because my stupid tablet died. It said it had like 3/4 of its battery, and then it just said, nope, I'm shutting off. I hear this is an Android problem.
Android.
Yeah, because I don't know anyone that's ever had battery problems on an iDevice.
iDevice works perfectly.
DerbyCon 2015, was it? 14?
Hey, it lasted the whole DerbyCon. When it died, it just died permanently.
Obviously, it's because someone hacked your phone, right? Oh, you have one of the tall glasses now.
Uh-huh.
I have an announcement to make before the show starts. It's a very sad announcement.
You broke your tall glass?
My tall glass is no more. So I have brought the pewter mug out of the cabinet, and I will simply have to pour a second beer halfway through the podcast. That's all. Anyway.
Well, we can make fun pouring style.
Yeah, you could. When I poured the first one, it got so much freaking head on it that I almost overflowed. I had to stop, which would be a bad thing if that happened during the podcast, because it got all over my phone, which I'm now using as a soundboard because of the aforementioned tablet problems. All right, let's get this show on the road. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to you. All right, time for the intro. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 19 of Iron Sysadmin. We're back.
We're back.
Against all freaking odds tonight.
So the intro played there?
Didn't you hear it?
Nope.
That's
Yep. This is called post-processing. So let's continue recording.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see.
Either the folks at home heard an awesome intro or watched you bobbing your head to the music and me staring at the screen going, what's going on?
Yeah, so it should have played. I don't know.
Yes, debug later. So.
No, I should totally start fiddling with these knobs now. Isn't that the right thing to do?
No.
No?
No. No. Fix it in post.
I am confused why it didn't. I'm gonna guess that anybody watching YouTube did not hear the intro. Oh well. Sorry. It should end up on the recording. So if you want to hear all the awesomeness that is the intro, outro, and transition music, you'll just have to download the podcast and listen later. So anyway, episode number 19, as we were saying. Here we are. I think we should probably just get right into the news because it's been a night.
Right into the news sounds good to me.
Right into the news. All right. So TechCrunch is reporting on something awesome, right?
Yes. Exciting. So October, there's a date somewhere that I don't remember off the top of my head. Deckard's coming back.
Deckard is returning.
So
it has been far too long since I've watched the original movie. But continue.
I've watched it in the last, I think, 2 years. I've seen it at least once.
Yeah.
I love it. It still holds up. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
and
cool.
The trailer. So, for those that don't know, Blade Runner 2049 is the sequel to Blade Runner, and trailer number 2 dropped, and it is. Watch it. It's pretty awesome.
Cool.
I'm looking very much forward to it, and it looks like Deckard plays more than just a passing character in it. It looks like he's actually going to be in a good chunk of the movie.
I've been sort of worried about the new Blade Runner movie, just because the first one was such a damned iconic classic. That I'm worried that the new one is not going to do it justice. But hopefully, I am wrong. That's all I can say.
Well, the trailers look pretty badass. So
yeah,
we'll
cool.
we'll see. They definitely kept the feel of the first one, at least from the backgrounds and the sounds and the cityscapes and whatnot. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. 2 many months away, so we'll see.
2 many months away. All right. Next, another one of yours. You being the Doctor Who fan.
Yes. So they've made a little bit of a change. So Peter Capaldi, this was his last season, and they're going to be moving on to the new Doctor, which they announced, leave over the weekend. I think was the official date. But for the first time in history, we're gonna have a female Doctor.
Wow! Awesome.
So Miss Jodie Whittaker, whose face looks really familiar. I didn't get a chance to do any background to see what else she's been on, but they did just kind of a quick intro. She'll be joining the cast during the Christmas show, as is wont for Doctor Who. And we'll see how she does. Yeah, usually around the Christmas show is when the old Doctor dies and the new one takes his place.
Oh, okay.
Or takes their place now. Can't even say his place anymore.
Oh yeah, right. You got to be all politically correct now.
Well,
gender neutral.
Yep.
Takes its place.
They've been calling for a female Doctor for a couple of years now, and it's finally happening. So,
well, no, I mean that's cool. I mean, yeah, I got no qualms with that.
Look, as long as she plays, the way
as long
that
as they don't
Doctor has been played,
as long as they don't start calling her nurse, because that would probably be offensive.
I'm not even going to comment.
Good. We'll just move along. All right. So next up, we've got some interesting. Let's see, what's this from?
I mean, interesting is a word for it. Disturbing, maybe.
Fast Code Design. I've actually never heard of this site before, but this was linked, I believe, from Slashdot. I found it. Basically, so apparently Facebook has computers that talk to each other, AIs specifically that talk to each other. I'm not really sure why, because the article's a bit long, and I didn't read through every word of it to find out why they talk to each other. But apparently, what?
They're communicating back and forth to, because they're different systems. So, just like systems talk over protocol, they just figure we'll let the AI figure out their own protocol.
Yeah, well, so according to what I have read of the article, they had initially made these things communicate using English.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't know why. Like, why would you make computers talk using English? Unless your point is to try to see if they can, which I guess maybe was the point. I don't know. Doesn't sound like a very effective way.
Yeah, so what they wanted to do was have it speak in English to each other. And the algorithm that they used to do it, they didn't reward the system for using proper English.
Yeah, so what I'm getting at is why did it start with English? Why didn't it start with something that was more native to a computer?
Probably so they could figure out what it was saying.
Yeah, so we can tell what the AI is saying to the other one. It's a way of snooping. So the AIs got smart enough to say, like, wow, English is not efficient, apparently. And they started just using English words, but in nonsensical strings. Right. And this is apparently the language that they are now speaking. Which is kind of creepy. Yeah,
I mean, you can take it down the dystopian path. When the robot overlords take over, they're going to have an incomprehensible language that we're not going to be able to figure out, so we'll never be able to defeat them.
Yeah, right. They're going to be talking in phrases like I, can, I, everything else, and balls have 0, to me, 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 to me. At least that's the examples they have here in the screenshot in the article.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yes.
odd stuff. I mean, I can't even. So, like, with the way these words are repeated, to me, it seems like these aren't even meant to have English meaning. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've created their own meanings for these words.
Sort of, and I guess the repeated, if I understand correctly, the repeated words are the AI counting. So when it says I 3 times in a row, apparently it wants 3 copies of I, of whatever that I stands for. So it's very nonsensical. But they've, at least at this point, they've sort of figured out a little bit of what was going on, and I don't know. Maybe they continue letting them go, and maybe they stop them cold and say, "No, you must speak English so that when you take over, we can combat against you."
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting stuff. It's, to anyone that follows sci-fi, it's a little bit concerning.
Well, I mean, that's also Facebook. So, I mean, there was that piece of it that was concerning to begin with.
Yeah, but so now Facebook has AIs that have made their own language, and they know everything about all of us except maybe you.
Oh, I'm sure it knows quite a lot about me.
Yeah,
We'll call this the Zuckerberg singularity.
The Zuckerberg singularity. All right, that sounds good to me. All right.
Moving right along.
And gadgets.
Because AIs that talk to each other aren't terrifying enough, IBM is going to encrypt all the things. So then we'll have encrypted AI communications in nonsensical languages
all the time. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So their new Z mainframe. I don't know. I'm not sure what they're going to do since they're at the end of the alphabet. But anyway, their new Z mainframe system apparently encrypts everything.
Encrypt all the things. I mean, that's the way to do it, right?
Yep. And
so I guess this means that the system, or that encryption, has become trivial enough for the CPU in the system that this won't be a problem.
It's the other way around. The CPU has become powerful enough that encryption is the overhead of encryption is not a big deal anymore.
So encryption is trivial enough for that CPU, not that encryption itself is trivial.
Yeah.
Same thing I was trying to say.
Yeah, kind of.
Different approach.
Yeah. It also has 32 terabytes of memory in it, so
Awesome. I want 32 terabytes. I don't know what I would do with 32 terabytes of memory, but I would figure it out. That's a problem I want to try to solve.
Dear IBM, please send mainframe must solve this problem of having too much memory.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this like they've just decided, hey, we can do this, we may as well encrypt everything? Or is this like some specially designed system for high security?
I mean, they kind of, it sounds like it's a bent towards like, look, we've solved the data breach problem. Everything's encrypted. To which my answer is, cool. Where's the key?
Yeah. I've always thought, all right, so encrypted at rest is awesome, but unless you're typing in the key from memory every time you boot up your server, it's got to be stored somewhere.
Right. So, okay. So we can go down that path too. Okay, cool. If they walk away with the server, I mean the mainframe.
Yeah, right. The mainframe.
If
you bring a forklift into your data center,
if the Hulk breaks into your data center, yep, and they walk away with the mainframe, again, where's the key? If the mainframe is running,
maybe the key is also encrypted.
Yeah, but if the mainframe is running and you access the mainframe, in order for the mainframe to run, everything has to be, the stuff that's running has to be decrypted.
Listen, this is IBM. They must have solved this problem.
This goes all the way back to the Oracle transparent encryption thing that.
I know.
I had so many problems with so many years ago.
I know. That's why I poked at it, because I knew where this conversation was going to go.
Yeah. It's, yes. Good job, IBM.
All right. IBM has encrypted all of it. Well, I mean, it depends on how they've implemented this. Maybe they have figured out something that they have not. Ooh, this new platform can also self-destruct encryption keys the moment there's any tampering. Awesome.
Yeah, it's the same self-destruct that
I picture Inspector Gadget tossing the exploding paper over his shoulder.
Yeah, it's just erasing the encryption key, and then
the data.
I mean, that's the other fun part. Like, oh, you've erased the encryption key. The data is no longer usable. Well,
the data is no longer usable for the person that owns it either. Crap.
It depends on how much time you have to figure out what the encryption key used to be.
Yeah.
And until it's out there and proven for a while, I'm not sure I would trust that the encryption key is destroyed anyway. But whatever. And what's tampering? Oh no, the root failed to log in 3 times. Quick, delete the encryption keys.
Yeah, right. It just turned out that the sysadmin had a few drinks, or it's too late at night. Oh crap! I just deleted all the data. No. Get your quantum computer and start cracking. All right. So this next article is from Wired, and I mentioned it to you because I heard it on, I think, Wired Science. Their daily podcast.
Yep.
And I knew after the previous article you found on CRISPR a while back that you would like this.
Yeah, CRISPR's fun. So
I didn't actually see the image before. That's a pretty cool little image. All right, go.
So apparently researchers are really bored these days.
Yeah, I know. Like, why?
and they used CRISPR to insert bits of DNA encoded with photos and a GIF of a galloping horse into live bacteria.
In the article, they actually have the original GIF next to the GIF that was reconstructed from the bacteria, and it's surprisingly well maintained.
Yeah, there's a couple artifact issues. But,
there's some issues there, but I mean, come on, it was digital data stored in organic life.
Right. Well, that's not the first time that's been done. I mean, they've stored a ton of stuff in just DNA. I mean, up at the top of the article here, they talk about they encoded War of Peace, a list of all the plant material archived in the Svalbard seed vault, and an OK Go music video.
Okay,
in DNA.
Why OK Go?
Why not? I guess.
Why not something better? I don't know.
So, this time they've encoded a multi-frame GIF image in bacteria using CRISPR, which is kind of cool.
It's neat stuff. I don't know if they go into it in the article, but in the podcast they were very clear that you shouldn't expect organic data storage anytime soon. Like, not at the consumer level, although that would be awesome. I'm waiting for positronic brains. We're getting there.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking more along the lines of like putting my encryption keys in my DNA and then using that as to grip things. I mean, that sounds cool. Yeah,
only if you can rewrite it though.
Well, sure.
It's the same problem that biometrics have, right? Like, my fingerprint unlocks my thing. Well, I can't change my fingerprint. And my fingerprint is left on everything that I touch. So,
well, hey, with all this new DNA changing technology, maybe we can finally change our fingerprints.
Maybe.
There you go. Custom fingerprints. You can put the swirls in whatever awesome pattern you want.
I wouldn't. If I could do custom fingerprints, I'd make something awesome in my fingerprint. Like my signature. I could just
Just imagine how many crimes you'd get away with in the first couple of years as they lift fingerprints and they go, "What the hell?"
It says "F you, pig." My fingerprint. We're gonna get arrested.
Not I didn't say anything bad. It was all my co-host. All right. Hey, have you heard about this Jaden K. Smith guy?
I don't know. The question is, did you?
Me? No, because I'm not on the book.
Not on the face, right?
No.
So yeah, apparently, and I actually saw this. Some people that I know actually shared this thing and fell for it. There was basically I mean, it turned into a meme actually. That was where I saw it, or at least a little graphic. It wasn't in the article that's on TechCrunch here. It was apparently sent originally as just a text message of some sort, warning you that a hacker, note the air quotes, named Jaden K. Smith was going to hack your Facebook account if you accepted a friend request from them, and that you should warn all of your friends not to accept the friend request from Jaden K. Smith because they could hack their accounts. I mean, this whole thing is just so ludicrous.
Wait,
but it went
this isn't
so
real?
viral.
I was trying to warn you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I will make sure.
I thought we were in the chat section. We're not. We're still doing news?
No, this is...
Yeah, so Jaden Smith, son of Will Smith, you know, the guy from Independence Day, and
Yep.
you know,
The guy who can punch out aliens?
Yep, that's him.
Yep.
And DJ Jazzy Jeff from the Fresh Prince, you know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah. For whatever reason, apparently he's a meme hacker dude or something on the internet now. Speaking
of DJ Jazzy Jeff, did you hear that Uncle Phil died?
Uncle Phil.
The guy he went to live with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the big guy. I think it was him. He passed away.
Oh, I thought that was a while ago.
Month or two.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Point.
Well, George Romero and
yep.
I cannot remember the other guy's name, but they died over the weekend.
I don't know if I heard the other one, but I heard about George Romero.
So for all you people bitching that zombie movies just like enough already, well, it's over now. They're all going to go away.
Now they're over.
It's all done.
So yeah, anyway, the only reason I thought we'd talk about this Jaden K. Smith thing was just because of the sheer ridiculousness. I mean, the whole thing, there was never a hacker named Jaden K. Smith. And the whole idea that simply by accepting someone's friend request, they could somehow break into your Facebook account.
Hang on, not so fast. I mean, maybe there is a hacker named Jaden K. Smith. You don't know that.
Maybe. Maybe this all started in truth and just got out of hand.
I mean, jump on the Facebook and just type in Jaden K. Smith and see if he pops up. I mean, he might be out there.
I'm sure there are a dozen accounts already that are some variation of the name Jaden K. Smith at this point. Maybe more. There may even be a domain name registered already. JadenKSmithTheHacker.com.
Yeah, this actually reminded me of the old Anna Kournikova virus from like the 90s.
Yeah, which spawned you to go looking on Google before the show started.
Yeah, she hasn't been around in forever.
Well, you know, the virus was like the highlight of her career.
Hey, she was a really good tennis player too. I mean, she did have skill.
As I mentioned before, like the big difference between this and Anna Kournikova, the Anna Kournikova virus, is that the Anna Kournikova virus didn't warn you about being hacked by Anna Kournikova. It told you were going to see her naked, and it infected you with the virus.
Yep.
So there's really not a whole lot of similarities.
Okay, whatever. It popped in my head for some reason.
Except all the hype that was around both of them.
Right. All right. Speaking of hype.
Back in the days of cool hype, internet worms, right?
Remember, like, I don't know, was it like a year or two ago when that site that you frequent, the one that you're on all the time, got hacked?
This was like, well, here it says 2015. I was just going to say this was like 2015.
Oh, all right, 2 years ago.
Well, it could be a year and a half. It depends on when in 2015.
Remember way back when?
I'm going to check my credit report. I'll find.
Nobody had a clue that this site existed, and then it got hacked, and now everybody knows about it.
It's like, oh, everyone knows about Ashley Madison, including all the bots, all the fake accounts that were on Ashley Madison. So
wow, who wrote? Oh, okay, I got it. So anyway, yeah. So apparently, Ashley Madison, a year and a half, 2 years later, is going to pay cash money to data breach victims.
$500. I mean, this kind of makes me wish I was a member, even if I wasn't active before it got breached.
Right.
I could use $3,500. So yeah, I guess what are they saying here?
I know your wife found out about you cheating using the Ashley Madison site, and it destroyed your relationship. You got divorced. You lost everything.
But I got
hey,
$3,500.
Here's $3,500.
$11.2 million settlement for roughly 37 million users whose personal details were exposed.
100 gigabytes of data.
Yeah.
I mean,
this
wow.
this breach obviously predates our podcast. Otherwise, we would have talked about it then. But yeah. I thought finding an article about closure to this whole thing was interesting enough to talk about. Yep, and $11.2 million worth of closure, $3,500 per per account. And I wonder how many did the bots get a payout?
How do you figure out? What? I guess they're
does that money go back to Ashley Madison?
If you have a credit card on file, they're gonna send that $3,500 to your credit card.
Right. I'm sure.
Unless, of course, all those cards were canceled.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, yep. And that, folks, is the news.
That is the news. And now I'm going to play the transition music that no one but me can hear. I tried not to headbang during the intro or the transition music, so I didn't look so weird to the YouTube viewers or viewer. By the way, there's someone watching on YouTube and in the chat. Hi, Digital FX.
Yeah, so I popped up the YouTube and flipped it on while the transition music wasn't playing.
Yeah,
and,
good.
Sounds like it's not playing on the YouTube either.
He, our chat attendee verified there is no there's no music in the YouTube. I think it has to do with the way I have the channels set up. Remember I told you I was splitting the channels to try to get our audio better? I think the channel I have, well, we can talk later about it. I'm sure the people listening don't care.
Look, if it was in a Docker container.
If it was in a Docker container, this would all be solvable. I would just destroy and restart the Docker container.
No. Verse is the destroy thing.
Oh, well.
Docker, you just RM it.
Okay, I would RM, which doesn't sound nearly as destructive as destroy. So anyway, if any of you follow us on Twitter, you may have seen that I got our stickers. And that they're pretty horrible. So I have one that I took off of the backing and I stuck on my own laptop because I just had to. Dang it, I finally got them. I wanted to use one. But I will be peeling it off as soon as I get better stickers. I basically had to rework some of the artwork because the font in the graphic was too light. Or I should say not like bold enough. You know what I mean? So it didn't show up well. And luckily, a guy who I met through DerbyCon, who also participated in the Hack Your Derby contest, also prints stickers. So he printed up a new sheet of stickers for us, and it was kind enough to do some test prints for me with some new artwork so that I could actually see that this stuff was going to work. So a Jedi Day, thank you. Awesome. We will hopefully have new stickers sometime after DEF CON because he's going to take the stickers to DEF CON with him. Give them to Danny, who is a mutual friend, and Danny I will see the following week at the LV Hackers meetup.
Oh, he's going to come to the Hackers meetup covered in stickers, isn't he?
He might. Hopefully, he keeps one or two of them on the backing that we can actually use.
I just hope he wears pants this time.
Pants, yeah, definitely. So anyway, new stickers are on the way. The old stickers didn't turn out so well. I'm a little disappointed in the way that the whole sticker thing was handled by Sticker U. It just, I don't know, maybe I'm just some sort of perfectionist, but basically if someone were to send me artwork and I were then to print them out, and it would have taken a monkey to realize that these stickers were not what the person paying me to make stickers wanted, I would have probably reached out to them and said, hey, your stickers didn't come out right. Can you give us different artwork? But no, they just shipped me the terrible stickers.
Maybe they don't have monkeys working there. Maybe they're like lemmings or, you know,
maybe Sticker U is run by lemmings.
orangutans or who knows.
And if it's run by lemmings, they've probably all walked off a cliff by now. Unless someone made the lemming stand at the edge of the cliff with his hands out. As I hit my mic again, right?
God, I missed that game. All right. Let's see. You keep talking. I'm going to go see if I can find a Lemmings game.
Hey, remember that Mac power adapter I was trying to find before the show started?
Yeah, so it's on the shelf in front of you, isn't it?
It's right there. It's right there above me.
See, you had not drunk enough to find the power adapter.
It was drinking that made me tilt my head.
I
saw it. So yeah, it means it's time for more.
Ah, yes. The bad stickers are now limited edition.
Yes, they're limited edition terrible stickers. Good idea. See if I can open this without.
That means we can double the price on them, and people will still buy them. What's the profit on that? Two times 0.
Yeah, considering that the price so far was free.
Oh, and we gotta watch him pour his beer.
Yes, everyone watch me pour my beer.
Last time he almost poured it all over himself, from what I understand.
No. It almost got all over the desk, not me.
What are we drinking?
Left-hand milk stout again. I bought a case of this stuff. This is the last of it.
But you have it in your right hand.
Left-hand milk stout. So I'm thinking that since my glass shattered, I'm gonna have to get another pewter mug that's engraved for the podcast.
That's
then,
that's another 60 beers.
If yes.
Okay, so the location that we would frequent when we both worked at the college had a nice list of beers that numbered in at 60, and as you drank through them, when you hit number 60, you got a free after you drank all the 60 beers. Probably free mug, and they would engrave it for you. And they have all these those that hadn't taken them home, they have the rest of the mugs hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah. So I still have a mug hanging on the ceiling there. As do you, don't you? Didn't you leave your mug there?
Yeah, I used it week and a half ago.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw you were there.
Yep.
So yeah, but yeah, you get them engraved. Mine says mug of excessive drinking, which seemed to,
Then mine says don't panic, because
which is not a bad. However, the day that I earned my mug, I had 3 beers. I had a lot of difficulty spelling the word excessive after having 3 beers.
You might say that you had excessive difficulty.
Excessive difficulty. I had to have the people that were there with me proofread what I had written down. I didn't want them engraving a misspelling on my mug. That would have been unfortunate.
Nice. So what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Can't really think of much. Well, I've been working on the Derby. Oh, I have it sitting here, by the way. In case you didn't see it here behind me.
You do.
So this is this year's model.
The comb over edition, I believe you called it.
That is hilarious. Oh, you remembered. Okay. Yeah, no. So that was because originally I had the screen on here, but not the pie. And anyone who's watching can see what I'm talking about. And the wires were just laying across it like this. That's why I was calling it the comb over edition. But no, I'm taking each of these wires and I'm basically sewing them with fishing line so that they're going to make like a pattern across the thing. So,
aren't you artistic?
This is just my crazy idea this year. Usually the inside would be full of electronics, which makes it uncomfortable to wear. So slowly but surely, I'm putting all of the electronics on the outside. There's my Pi Zero. There's the screen.
Where's the battery going?
If I had a battery to plug into it, I could boot it up and show you that the screen actually powers up. And
is the battery going on the outside too?
I'm not sure yet. Depends how much. If nothing's inside, I might put the battery inside, because the main reason for not putting it inside is so that I have enough room to sit it on my head without the battery resting on top of my head. But with all this stuff on the outside, it may not be a problem. I don't know. So yeah, that's this year's Derby. Which will be
Yeah, I
awesome.
saw you. I hadn't had a chance to look, but I saw you make an announcement about it the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically just released. I think it was the same amount of information that we put out on the podcast 2 weeks ago. Basically, we're building attack derbies, and we're going to release plans when they're ready. Hopefully, at the beginning of August, which is only like 3 weeks away at this point, 2 weeks away.
Oh,
So we kind of need to hurry up and get some stuff done.
okay. No pressure or anything. Thanks.
No pressure or anything. Yeah, I mean, it's partially my fault. I started this in May, and still, I don't know. It feels like I'm just not getting anywhere with it.
We've gotten. We're getting there. Learning along the way.
I got the OLED thing worked out. The little microservice we talked about.
Yep.
So that's cool. Which is actually going to be very useful, I think. Because now any other service on the Derby can write to the display without needing direct access to the display. So this will be good.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That was sort of the design behind it. So
that was the point.
Yep. And you wrote that in what, Python?
Yeah. So the microservice runs in Python in a Docker container, or out of a Docker container. Depends on how you want to run it. But it's all up on GitHub, so you can pull it down and run that piece. I started working on like an advertise script that'll just sort of cycle through a few things that go to the display. Does
it use cookies?
For the advertisements? Yeah, so we can get your browsing history and give you advertisements that are relevant to you. No, it doesn't.
Well, yeah. No? Oh.
It doesn't do that.
Is that next year's?
That'll be next year. Yeah, we'll pull in from the Facebook. What do they call that? The grid? Whatever.
Graph search, right? Yeah, graph
search. Yeah, we'll pull in from the Facebook graph search, and we'll get all your data.
Then we'll pipe it all through TensorFlow to figure out what ads are gonna sell the most.
Sure, good idea. So I'm not sure what
I've been learning a new programming language.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
Is it cool? Is it awesome?
writing stuff in Go.
Oh, trendy.
Yeah.
So write it like Ruby. Ruby was trendy.
Oh my God,
until Go showed up.
Never liked Ruby. So you know all that crap in Python where you have to indent, and if you don't,
nobody
indent,
ever liked Perl either, but we all used it.
Yeah. Anyway, indentation in Python is that thing that you're kind of forced to do.
Yep.
Doesn't work if you indent correctly.
Yep.
So I spent like 45 minutes, almost an hour last night, trying to figure out why the hell my code was not working the way that it should be working. Banging my head against the table, trying to figure it out.
Spaces instead of tabs.
No, I didn't put a capital letter at the beginning of the method name.
Oh God! It's not just. Is it indent sensitive and
doesn't care in the slightest about spacing, but capitalization is a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, working with Puppet is like that too. Puppet cares.
Of course, capitalization matters when you're calling a function, right? So like you have to match the function name. No, this is if you make a package. Follow this now, okay? So you make a package, which separate source code file. Yeah. If you want to have an internal method to that package that isn't exported, you use a lowercase letter to start the method name. If you would like to export the package or export that method outside of the package, so outside of it, you can use it like in your main code, you use a capital letter at the beginning of the method name.
I mean, I can see the logic there. It sounds like once you understand that, it's very. I don't want to say straightforward, but
right. But for somebody who has used camel case, right? Like camel case always starts with the first word is always lowercase, and you use a capital letter for each additional word.
Right.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you can't do that.
Right.
I really
beating my head against the keyboard because I cannot figure out why it's not working.
I get where these modern languages are going with forcing indentation or forcing this or forcing that, but it really is annoying because
the indentation thing, like you can almost say if you're writing code, you should be indenting to make it readable anyway.
Yeah, but that wasn't always common practice.
No, I know, but it's it's common enough that it just makes sense. So that one I can forgive. But really, capital letters? Are you like you couldn't just use like an export statement or an import statement or something stupid like
No,
that?
that export is difficult to type. Imagine if you had 3 beers and had to type export.
Imagine if you had no beers and it still didn't work and you were like, "What the hell?"
Now I need beer. Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah, so I finally figured it out. I finally Googled it, and then my coworker, who has also written a bunch of Go, said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that." Thanks.
I forgot to tell you about that.
Yeah, but it does have some other neat conventions though. So I'm like, I'm writing an XML thing. Don't ask, but I'm writing an XML thing, and it encodes XML. The way that it works, it's pretty slick.
Cool.
You use what I don't know what they're called in Go, but in Python you would basically call it a decorator. And when you declare the variable, you just put this little thing at the end that says XML and like the name of the tag that you want to use. And when you run the encode method, it just magic happens and the correct XML comes out the other end. It's pretty slick.
Nice.
So anyway, that's been my fun.
Cool. Yeah, I've been mainly focusing on some Jeep stuff because the jamboree that I guide for is in 2 weeks. Trying to get a couple things ready before that hits.
Yeah,
And I got to focus on Derby. After that, it's Derby, Derby, Derby.
I've seen you jeeping quite often.
Yeah, I ripped out part of the suspension and put it all back in. That was fun. That took like 2 Saturdays.
I cleaned out my garage.
Tore apart the dashboard and moved some stuff around. That was fun.
I cleaned my office.
Cleaned your Yeah, you did. You finally cleaned your office. I mean, just last podcast, you were like, "Yeah, I'm never going to clean this," and now you cleaned it.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, and by
You're
clean,
so unreliable.
by clean, I mean the boxes are outside the door.
Yeah, by clean, I meant I got a bulldozer and pushed all of the nasty crap out of the room.
Yeah, something along those lines. But it's helped me go through some stuff and get rid of some junk that I didn't need. So it's
Right.
helping.
Right.
We'll get there.
Cool stuff.
All right, you want to talk some Docker?
Yeah, I'm going to play the transition music that you can't hear first. I'm totally going to tweet this stuff too.
I can't see what you're tweeting either. You want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that'd be a good idea. With those pictures of Anna Kournikova you sent me.
I can't tell. Is the transition music over?
It's over. And when I started talking, it was done.
Okay, just check it. I mean, it doesn't sound like the YouTube people can hear it either. So I'm not,
No, and I think I know why, but I'm not going to go into it now.
I think you're hoping it records the transition music, and I think
I'm
you're
almost
going to be
certain it's
disappointed.
recording. Pretty much anything that comes out of my headphones gets recorded.
Well, aren't we the important one?
Indeed, we are. Wait, IR. It's like the royal we, right?
I don't know. I never really understood.
I don't know either.
All right. So last week we talked Docker and about stuffing things in little containers and making them do crazy, new, and interesting things in microservice-y ways. And one thing that we sort of skirted around was how you get these things to talk to each other. And turns out you just network them together. I mean, it's really not that hard, guys. What's the problem? So Docker networking is a thing. And out of the box, Docker has some pretty basic networking setups. By default, your containers all end up on a network that's just NATed to whatever the host IP is of your Docker host. And then anything that's in that network can talk to each other on any port. There's no ACLs or security groups or any of that weird stuff.
As it should be. That stuff gets in the way.
I know. It's so much. So the developers keep telling me.
Freaking firewalls.
Right. Everything works when you don't have a firewall.
Yeah.
So that's by default. But by making some simple changes, you gain a lot more functionality. For instance, if you create a new Docker network, and we're talking vanilla Docker at this point, and you can set it up exactly the same way as the default one, you gain an automatic DNS system. There's a term for it that I can't remember. Anyway, basically, the container names are now resolvable from any other container on that same network. So, for instance, if you have an Nginx container and you have a web front end container, from that Nginx container, you don't have to go into the config and figure out what the IP address is of the web front end container that is dynamic and changes every time. You can just put in web front end, assuming that's what you named the container.
That's
and
handy. So it's just specifically based on just the
the container name. Yeah, it's cool. It's slick, and it comes in really handy. And there's some other basics. So you can have let's see. There's the NATed networks. There's what they call a null network, which literally connects to nothing and allows nothing out. I'm not entirely certain I know what the whole point of that is. I'm sure
why does it exist? It's there just to take up memory.
There's a host. What do they call it? A host pass through? A host bridge. I'm sorry, host bridge.
Okay.
So what that does is when you put a container in that, it bypasses it doesn't do natting, and it doesn't use the host IP address. It puts you directly on the wire. Huh. So in that container, you can either, assuming there's a DHCP server somewhere, you could DHCP off of that network segment, or you can put a static IP in it and use that right on the network segment. So it sort of bypasses the host network. And then there's a flag that you can give it called --internal, which creates a network that remains internal and is not natted at all, so that you can have like a private network that you can talk on. For
like back channel communications for your data or whatever.
Yep. So you could put your database on that, and have your web server able to talk to it, but now the database does not have an actual external network connection. So, and those are the basic Docker networks. If you do,
so this would all be limited to a single host, though, correct?
Right. So if you want to go multi-host, and you use just a standard, the standard Docker Swarm configuration, which is all built into the vanilla Docker stuff. What Swarm does is sort of connect all those together and creates what's called an overlay network, and the overlay network works much the same way. And then one of the benefits of overlay is that you can hit any one of the Docker hosts that are in the swarm, and it will expose it. Like, it automatically does the routing for you to expose the Docker hosts on those ports for you. So that's pretty slick. But that's really, really basic stuff. There's no ACLs. There's no fancy anything. It doesn't really connect to the outside world other than through NAT, or potentially through the host bridge. So there's limitations. So there are a number of different Docker networking projects, if you will, that are out there. I've played around with 2 of them. I know of, I think, at least half a dozen, maybe more at this point, and that continues to increase. The 2 more popular ones that I'm aware of are Calico and Weave, and they sort of work in different ways. So let's talk about Weave first. Weave is very similar to how the vanilla Docker stuff works. It's more sort of for doing networking inside of Docker itself, but it also handles. They have, I don't remember exactly how or what they called it, but they basically do ACLs between. You can do tags and ACLs and stuff on there to sort of add security on the networking layer. So these are generally referred to as SDNs inside of Docker. So you have it's all software defined stuff. So basically you create a profile and you apply that profile to different Docker containers, and it just sets up the networking for you. So there's not a lot of networking knowledge that's needed. So we've played with Weave a little bit. They have a lot more tools than just the networking. They have Weave Scope, which is for sort of digging into the Docker containers and looking at the properties and seeing they have a pretty graph that they'll show you of all the containers and the connections and everything else.
Everyone likes graphs.
Yep. And one of the benefits of these different networking projects is that most of them work on vanilla Docker as well as others. So Weave and Calico both support CNI, which is the Container Network Interface, I believe is what it stands for, which is a standard that Kubernetes came up with. So it allows networking to be a plugin.
So for folks listening along, we've been throwing a lot of acronyms around. So SDN, Software Defined Networking, in case you weren't aware of that already. ACL is a pretty common one, Access Control List, right? Is that the way you were using that?
Yep.
Right. So basically, like, I guess at its very core, you could almost ACL is kind of synonymous with like firewall rules.
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty much an allow deny list. Allow this traffic, deny that traffic.
Right. So I mean, go back to your CCNA training, and there's you'll see all about ACLs.
CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Associate. Sorry, I thought we were
got to defining all
the acronyms. Yep.
All of the acronyms. No, I just wanted to make sure people were aware of what we were referring to. So
the neat part about SDNs, especially these that they're using in Docker, is that they sort of do away with the traditional access list style stuff where you say allow from this IP or allow this IP on this port to get to this IP on this port, that sort of thing. And what they do is they use, because Docker, for the most part, is dynamic addressing.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying allow this IP to get to that IP, you say allow this container to get to that container. Right. And then it sort of figures out what the addresses are.
Probably based on the dynamic DNS that it stands up.
Right. Project Calico adds even more to the mix. So for starters, you can do BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, which is one of the major routing protocols that's used on the internet. So it uses BGP to actually bridge between the Docker networking and the external networking that's available in a lot of places. Now, you have to be able to run BGP in order for that to work, obviously. And in some places like AWS, you can't. But where you can run BGP, when you do that, it's slick. It's really neat.
There's no BGP available in AWS, or just at the instance level, there's not.
Yeah, so
like you can run your own BGP sessions or whatnot.
Right, you can do BGP externally with a like if you have a physical connection coming into AWS, which is a thing that you can do.
I didn't know that was a thing you could do.
Yep, you can set up BGP with that. I believe you can do BGP over. I think you can do it over VPN connections, and those
can you do it over carrier pigeon.
Those are the only two locations that I know of. No, turns out AWS, at least as I've seen so far, doesn't support the carrier pigeon protocol. Transport mechanism, sorry.
AWS is breaking everything, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So, but with Calico, you can do you do tags. So you can tag different types of containers. So you can say, have a database tag, and you put all your databases into, you tag them all with database, and then you say this web front end, specifically this container that's a web front end, is allowed to get to the databases on this port. And it will just open up it'll create the necessary network connections, open up the ports, and off you go.
That's handy. That's a lot better than opening up a ticket with your network team and waiting 2 days for the response.
Yeah, it's all YAML, yet another markup language. It's all
cool.
YAML configs.
It sounds very convenient for the developers, but it does make me wonder how easily it could be abused.
Well, so
generally along with convenience comes lack of security.
Well,
the more security you have, the less convenient it is. The less convenient it is, the more security you have.
Right. So here's the trick. The YAML configs for all the security and the networking and everything are set up on the physical machine. So they're set up on the Docker host. So on the Docker host, you would apply all the different YAML configs. When a developer creates a container, and this depends on what your workflow is for doing these things, but you're going to assign tags to it. So the developer can be told, like, hey, if you want to, if you need database access, you need to, put this tag in place. So if they're creating a web front end, you say, like, these tags apply to these different types of web front ends, etc. And then all of the access controls are already in there to allow all the different connections. So it's not necessarily the developer that's creating the security rules. It's whoever is managing it's the DevOps guy, if we want to abuse that term, that sets all that up.
I was thinking from an attacker's perspective, right? I guess there'd be a whole lot of inside knowledge he'd have to have, and he'd have to get access to your Docker host to really do anything nasty with this stuff.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the attacks come from getting access to the Docker host. I don't know of any way, and honestly, I haven't dug deep into it, but I don't know of any way to obtain the Docker metadata about a container that you're in, as long as you're in the container. So from inside the container, right, I can't tell you what tags are applied to it.
Well, I'd imagine that would be the case. There's no real reason that the service running in a container should need to get that sort of metadata.
Right. And if
pretty much every bit of metadata or data that is passed along to a container is done via something like an environment variable, from what I've seen.
Yeah, you pass environment variables in. Yep.
Yeah, that data I don't believe is.
Right. So just like a virtual host setup, protecting the host machine is like,
yeah.
As long as the attacker can't get to the host, your VMs are, they may be able to break into a VM, but they're not going to be able to control everything.
Right. So a lot of the paradigms still apply from the virtualization days. Protect your hypervisor like it's the keys to the kingdom, because, well, it is. But a lot of it's changed because Docker is such a different technology. Your applications are essentially running in the host's kernel, where in the virtualization days they're not.
Right. No, agreed. And to that end, there's a bit of a move to using things like CoreOS or Atomic Host,
right?
Which is those are immutable operating systems, which means once they're installed on the box, when they're running, you can't make changes to the operating system. So CoreOS is interesting because by default there's no SSH. Like you have to have console access in order to get into it. Atomic Host allows SSH, but has other features. I've been playing with Atomic Host a little bit recently, and it's pretty slick. It's a lot of fun. Cool. So if you're using an immutable OS, arguably you're a little safer because they're very, very cut down in size. It's basically a kernel, and that's it. So you're removing everything that you don't need in order to make the smallest attack surface possible and still run your code.
So before I derailed you, you were about to talk about Calico. Or did you start talking about Calico, perhaps?
No, we talked about Calico. So Calico is a bit more networking centric. It does a bit more on the access list side. It seems to have more options with how it does routing and whatnot. And then it has, the biggest piece, or the biggest differentiator, is that it actually has a full-blown routing protocol to allow you to connect inside of your Docker container ecosystem to externally over BGP to your normal networking. Normal in air quotes.
Normal. So in the days before Docker, which I mean is almost like 6 months ago.
Turns out Docker's been around a lot longer than that, but okay.
Yeah, well, no, I mean in the days before Docker was big, right? So the way we did networking was we had a bunch of firewalls, we had a bunch of VLANs, we had firewalls between the VLANs, and that's how we handled all this stuff. Does Docker still have the concept of VLAN tagging and whatnot, or via these various SDNs, or is this all turned on its head?
Well, it's abstracted away. So, yes.
But so like I've got a defined network within, whatever SDN I've chosen.
Yep.
Is there a VLAN associated with that when it leaves the Docker host?
No.
No.
So that's the trick. So,
so these are all like virtual networks within your Docker host or your Docker cluster, depending on how you've configured it.
Right. And you can, so depends on how you set things up, but inside of Docker, each network is separate, right? So and never the twain shall meet. When you leave Docker, when you leave a Docker host, it can be a bunch of different things. So it sort of depends on how you set it up. With Calico, you can use BGP and sort of link things together that way. So you can actually have certain networks that can go out and connect to certain other networks. And you sort of get your VLAN style set up like that. With Weave, I believe you can choose, and I have less experience with Weave, but I believe you can choose your exit node depending on how you set it up. So you could have a host that's on a specific network and then have traffic leave that host to get onto those networks, as opposed to a different host that goes to other networks. There is a, and this was experimental the last time I looked at it. Let's see, Docker VXLAN. So there's a VXLAN plugin, or I guess it's a plugin for Docker that may give some VLAN style functionality to Docker, but I don't know. Yeah, so it looks like you can assign an VLAN ID and a bunch of other information, but like I said, this was still experimental the last time I looked at it, and we had moved on to looking at some of the more advanced networking stuff since then. It's possible It has come out of being beta or being experimental and is a full-blown thing now. And if that's the case, my understanding is that you can set that up to link internal Docker networks to a VLAN on the outside. But that's the only one that I know of off the top of my head.
But I guess if Docker's not designed to work that way, is it worth patching that in there or not?
Well,
it sounds like it operates just fine without it. I guess it would depend on your application.
Right. It depends on what you're up to.
How you're interacting with it, I suppose.
So
maybe you need that VLAN tagging, maybe you don't.
Right. It makes a lot of sense if you're marrying a Docker network with a traditional network. So if you're in a transition state, or if there's just simply applications that you can't put into Docker for whatever reason, it may make sense to have those applications live on a VLAN that is bridged into your Docker networking through something like the VXLAN plugin.
Right.
Whereas if you're 100% Docker, there's different ways of handling things. So you may use, so if you're in AWS, for instance, you may have everything inside of Docker, and the only thing that's exposed to the outside are quote public interfaces. Whether that's public, to the world, or public to your business. And then you can use something like the Elastic Load Balancer to bridge the gap there and provide a common interface.
Okay, so basically the VLAN tagging and whatnot may be useful if you're in a transitionary state, or
Right.
if you're in that state that probably a lot of people are in right now with the move to DevOps, as in if they're not a brand new startup,
Right.
where they're trying to, take their monolith, as the term seems to be coined, and break it into microservices.
Right.
You may still need that old style VLAN tagging approach to things, at least until your monolith is broken into pieces.
Right.
But we all know that the monolith cannot easily be broken into pieces because the material is so dense that nothing that is created by mankind can break it.
It's nothing but stars.
Stars.
Yeah, so if you're in a traditional data center, so say, I don't know, a college, where you have your own data center. I don't know where
you would get this example from.
Your own switches, your own routing infrastructure, then something like the VXLAN plugin may come in handy. Or, Calico could come in really handy there too if you run BGP. If you're running in AWS or Azure or Google Compute or any of the other cloud architectures, VXLAN probably isn't going to help you a lot because they're not going to let you play with VLANs. In those cases, other Docker networking plugins may work better. Weave, Flannel.
But if you're running Docker in your own data center, like many people that have existing infrastructure are going to start with,
right,
it's definitely a useful thing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's open source, so it's all about having all the options available.
Yes, all the options.
Yep.
So you can hang yourself in many different ways.
Right. So one thing that I didn't mention that's worth mentioning, if you're using Docker Swarm and you're using their overlay network model, or if you're using, I believe both Calico and Weave at this point support this, but I would double check before I relied on it. The connections between Docker hosts. So for all of these, when you have multiple Docker hosts that are clustered together, whether that's Kubernetes or DCOS or Docker Swarm or whatever, you're going to have to talk between the hosts. So when the networking part of Docker, whichever you've chosen, talks between the hosts, well, you want that to be secure. Otherwise, somebody can just listen. And a skilled attacker may be able to listen in. So one of the newer options in Docker Swarm, and something that I believe has existed in either Calico or Weave, and I don't remember which. But anyway, they encrypt. You can encrypt those connections by default, so that no matter what's going over there, no matter what network it's on, it's encrypted between the hosts. And it uses a standard. Let's see. Swarm is using an AES encryption method, and I think the other ones just use a standard SSL style connection, or maybe it's an IPsec tunnel connection. But that was a big thing that we were looking into when we started using Docker, was to make sure that all of those connections are encrypted by default. If you think about it, that can simplify some stuff. For instance, and what I find really, really nice is your web systems don't have to have encryption turned on. So you can put a single certificate on your proxy, as long as that proxy is also in Docker, and then all your connections internally inside of Docker are encrypted anyway. So there's no reason to put an SSL cert on the website itself. You can just make sure the proxy does that, assuming that.
That's handy. Yeah, so the end user
yeah.
gets whatever cert you've applied to your proxy.
Right.
The backend service is encrypted via virtue of Docker's networking.
Right, provided your backend
cool.
service can support that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're on a single host, that encryption may even be moot, don't you think?
On a single host, yeah, because it's all internal to the kernel.
I mean, that's all like kernel. If someone's sniffing that traffic, they own your machine anyway.
Yeah, at that point, you've got bigger issues. But
if you're between two Docker hosts, then instead of owning that machine, they would have had to have owned the network your Docker hosts live on, which is also bad. In order to get the traffic, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Whether it's encrypted or not. But yeah,
sure,
I guess if you're on Amazon or something where it's a public cloud and you don't have full control of the network, then sure.
Yep. Yeah, encrypt all the things. IBM's doing it.
Yeah, IBM's doing it. So obviously, we all should be.
Yes, agreed.
Encrypt all the things.
So there's a lot more to Docker networking.
I'm sure there is.
There's a lot more that I don't know, and that somebody else may know. But if you have questions or comments or whatever, let us know, and we can discuss them.
Yeah, so Jason's got a decent networking background, so I would hope that translating anything from the old style of networking into the Docker realm is certainly something that we can try to figure out.
Yes. Yeah. It's fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly wish I had more time to tinker with Docker. We're just not there yet at the moment. I've got other things going on from a professional level. And to be honest, I just haven't had time to do my personal stuff. I really want to move all my personal sites, including, the site that we host the podcast on, and the site that I do my Jeep stuff on, and even, like the Nextcloud instance that I keep all my data on. I really like to Dockerize all of that stuff. I just haven't had the time. Every time I start working on it, I go down some rabbit hole of like, well, okay, in order to do my Nextcloud instance, I have to do this and that and this and then this other thing, and I don't have time to learn all this right now. I'm going to have to do this later. And then later is the same deal.
Yeah, time is that thing that nobody has. I don't have it either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my web server is still on a freaking Rel 6 host. I should be ashamed.
Shame on you, sir. Shame on you.
I know. I'm totally ashamed. Maybe at the very least. So I had this migration path in mind where instead of going to Rel 7 on Apache, I was going to go to Rel 7 on containers. And because of all this learning curve, I haven't gotten there. So I should probably just move it to Rel 7 on Apache.
Yeah, I would just move it to Rel 7, and then from there you can go Docker.
Really going to have to do that, just because the thing is aging and it's got problems. And the last thing I want is for people to not be able to download the podcast because my Rel 6 host has crashed again. It's kind of aging.
Yeah. Yep.
It's also on old hardware, which is bad. But
yeah,
anyway,
I think we all have that there.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
All right. So does that? I see you put a couple of links in the show notes. I'm gonna include them when I publish the podcast. Are these all information about Weave and Calico and whatever else you've got going on here?
Yep. Just a whole bunch of Docker networking stuffs.
Good stuff.
Whatever you want to play with.
Good stuff.
And there's one that's, it's a little old. It's about a little over a year and a half old now. That kind of puts. It gives you an overview of Calico, Flannel, Weave, and the Docker overlay network stuff, and kind of the pros and cons of each.
Your first link here, it looks like.
Yeah, it was well written, and it's worth reading.
Good intro, at least, right?
Yep.
Even if, I don't know how much of it's out of date at this point,
but the overlay stuff is a little bit out of date because they've added a lot of things recently.
In Docker years, a year and a half ago is like the Stone Age.
Yeah, the other projects are moving at a little slower pace, but obviously there's new stuff in there, and any benchmarks they've done are need to be redone. But for the most part, it gives you the gist of each.
Awesome. Good information. All right, so I guess if anybody wants any more info about Docker networking, we can certainly research it. It could also be that simply through the work that Jason is already doing, he may find your answer before you've asked it. So maybe we'll have a follow-up at some point after you've learned more. If you find that you learn enough more that it'll fill another episode. But I think in our next episode, we may start to tackle some of the orchestration platforms for Docker. So I don't know which one we're going to start with. Maybe Swarm.
Swarm is sort of the built-in one.
So I'm going to be honest that I'm going to have to learn some things about these before we cover them, just because like OpenShift and Kubernetes I have a little bit of experience with, but Swarm I've never even touched, which may sound odd because that seems to be where everyone goes first.
Right.
I didn't. I've never even touched it. So anyway, maybe Jason can carry that much like he did the networking.
I try. I gotta pull my weight as a co-host every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been a crazy week for me, and I mean, Jason even wrote the intro for tonight's podcast just because I was too busy fiddling with like, I need this cable, I need that thing, and the.
Yeah, I mean, maybe next time you can carry things so I can sleep through the podcast.
Yeah. How's that beer going for you? How much have you drank of your 13%?
About halfway through. Damn, it's good though.
I have finished off both of my beers that I brought up with me.
Have
a little bit left.
I am partaking of the Stone Farking Wheaton Woot Stout. Which is a collaboration between Will Wheaton and some guys from Stone. I believe both of these guys were from Stone Brewing.
It's pretty awesome.
It is quite good. But I love my stouts, so.
Yeah. I don't think I've tried the Woot Stout. I'm gonna have to. I guess it might be difficult to get my hands on at this point.
So that place that has our mugs has it.
Like right now?
They have it right now. That's where I got this. I'm
going to Porter's tomorrow.
Yep.
That's all there is to it. Gonna have to.
Yep.
I thought that was the one that our mutual friend gave to you. Didn't he give you one?
I also had one from him. I just happened to see another one and said, well,
gotta buy more.
Gotta buy more.
All right. So I'm gonna have to find a reason to go. Well, I need to find a reason.
Yeah. I need to find beer.
Yeah. So, Rob, if you're listening, because I know you listen to the podcast, we're going to Porter's tomorrow.
There you go. Rob, fair warning. You're going to be dragging Nate back.
Rob, you want to drive? All right, anyway. So, I wanted to mention during our chat, and I forgot, our feedback from Al last time around of the Admin podcast.
Yes.
I went ahead and listened to their most recent episode before we recorded, which I think the day before we're recording this, they released another episode, which I have not listened to yet. But
yeah, two of them came onto my podcast catcher that I haven't listened to.
First, I want to say thanks to Al because he mentioned our podcast on his podcast, which may or may not have gotten us some new listeners. That'd be cool. I also want to say that after listening, they did an episode on subnetting, which, I mean, just imagine an audio podcast about subnetting. That's kind of how it was. So, not the most riveting subject matter, but still, I thought, a pretty good podcast. So anyone who can take subnetting and turn it into an audio podcast that doesn't make me fall asleep while driving, I think you're doing a good job. So good job to the Admin podcast. I get this sense just from that episode anyway, that they may be targeting an audience that is a little lower on the stack than what we've been covering. So I think that's a really good complementary thing. I think that if you guys are looking for lower level stuff, like how do I subnet networks, go ahead, give Admin a try. I mean, I think it was a pretty good episode. I thought they covered it pretty well. And like I said, they covered it in a way that I wasn't, tempted to turn off the thing just because it was kind of bland, right? So
Yeah, so it's on my to-do list. I'm still catching up on podcasts.
yeah, you should
My
try to go
list
listen
is.
to it. I want to.
Oh no, it's in the rotation. I just haven't gotten there yet. It may actually come up
I know,
tomorrow. I'm not sure.
I
But
know the feeling.
um as a recovering former network engineer, administrator, whatever you want to call me, guys, if you're a sysadmin and you don't know subnetting, you need to listen to this podcast. Like the
Absolutely.
the number of sysadmins that I have had to deal with that don't know basic subnetting is astronomical, and it is. I mean, I don't even know what to say half the time.
I'd like to think that I was not one of those. One of those.
No, you're actually really good. I mean, you at least have some networking background. But I've worked with sysadmins who, like, when it came to networking, like, they didn't even know what an IP address was. Like, how did you make your server work? Like,
honestly, it's sort of outside of the wheelhouse. I mean, you came up through the ranks as a network focused guy with
yep,
an interest in sysadmin. I came up through the ranks as a sysadmin with at least a passing interest in networking, right? So from the other side of IT, I can tell you that subnetting and networking and figuring out IP spaces and routing and all that, it's just outside of the venue of a lot of sysadmins because they have a network team they can fall back on for that stuff.
right.
They can
No,
come to the network
I
team and say,
understand.
like, I need network, and the network team just makes it happen. Just like the network team can go to the systems team and go, I need server, and they make a server happen for them, right? It's just different
For
different skill sets, right?
for anybody who is on either side of that, whether you're on the system side or the networking side, these two these two disciplines are so integrated with each other. Do
Yes.
yourself a favor. Seriously, do yourself a favor and start digging into the opposite discipline.
Yeah, I mean, I will absolutely agree. If
As a systems
you're
guy, you don't need to know BGP and you don't need to know ISIS, but you should
sure,
know how IPs work. You should know how routing, just general rules of routing work. Like, these things are really important. And likewise, if you're a networking guy, you should know the basics of how a server works. You know, whether that's a Windows server or a Linux server or a Mac server, like, it doesn't matter. Understand, like, what is going on. I mean, just having that knowledge will increase your, your net worth, like how much you're worth to any company astronomically, and will make your life so much easier.
yeah, what Jason said.
I mean, being able to go to a systems guy and talk to him and be on the same, like, wavelength and speak his language is invaluable. And likewise, going to a networking guy as a systems guy and being able to speak the networking language, at least, passingly, is it's again, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So
you have these two people that are talking, they don't know what the hell's going on in either world.
yeah, so for something of a not too specific example, I at the college we definitely have a network team and a systems team. They're separate, right? Not the same people. The number of times that I've had conversations with the network team, maybe not at their level, but at least coherent enough that we're able to come to a common ground and figure out what exactly is causing, that weird networking problem that my server is experiencing. Without the network background that I've got, that would be a lot more difficult because we're essentially talking two different languages.
Right.
Mine's all software based and theirs is all, network based, whatever.
Right. Simple stuff, like, you go to the network guy and say, like, my software isn't working. And the network guy replies with, okay, what port is that running on?
Yeah, right. So
Like, you have to be able to answer that question. Like,
I had the either fortune or misfortune of working in a job role where I basically had to manage all the network and all the servers. Right. It was me and one other guy, but still, both of us had to know networking well enough that we could manage the network. We had to know servers well enough that we could manage all the servers. Right. And it was really sort of a trial by fire. I had some of that training when I was at business school. I had some of that experience while I was at the ISP that both Jason and I worked at, but servers has always really been my thing. But I think all of that background in networking that wasn't really the path that I wanted has really helped. So if you're, yeah, I mean, just what Jason said, if you're a sysadmin and you don't know any networking and you just depend on others to handle all the networking for you, get at least a working knowledge of how to set up subnets, how at least the concepts of how routing works. Like, I don't expect you to be able to log into a router and configure all the networking, configure all the routing and peering addresses and all that stuff. Like, this is all stuff that I'm familiar with, but I couldn't set up if I tried. I mean, at least not without some help. But it's good to have an idea of how this stuff works.
And if you're looking for somebody to teach you these sorts of things, ask your counterpart in the other department.
Yeah.
They're most likely a geek, and they're going to want to teach you stuff.
Yeah, I mean, especially relating back to our main topic tonight of Docker networking. As a system administrator, you may look at these SDN, infrastructures and go, I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, this is all Greek to me. If you have a background, at least a working knowledge of networking, all of this stuff is going to make more sense to you.
Right.
So, I mean, I haven't played deeply in the Docker side of networking, but I have looked at this from an OpenStack perspective. And some of the things, I mean, networking is one of the hardest things to get running in OpenStack. And I'll be honest, I've had trouble getting it working, even with the knowledge that I have. It is a complicated nut to crack. But having looked at it, I can say that if I didn't have any knowledge of networking, I would have to depend 100% on my network team. And they don't know OpenStack. They don't know, Neutron or whatever. Neutron's the wrong word, I think. Anyway, they don't know the plugins for OpenStack that do SDN. So they're going to depend on me to do that. I'm going to depend on them to do networking. And there's going to be a whole lot of miscommunication. It's the best way I can put it.
Right, because I mean, that's where things are converging, and where the sysadmin is the one who's actually setting up the networking at that point.
Yeah, so as a sysadmin with some networking knowledge, you end up as that bridge between the guys who manage your network and you who have to manage the SDN components of whatever infrastructure you're trying to build. So you're going to have to learn some networking. You're not expected to be a network engineer, but something maybe on par with what you might call a network administrator, or maybe a junior network administrator. And I mean, let's be honest, learning this stuff isn't going to hurt your career.
And it enables you too. So if you know at least have a passing knowledge of networking, you don't have to go to your networking team every time something breaks. You can go in and you can say, oh, right, so I'll do a ping test first. Okay, that worked, but let's see, can we do a trace route? We can look at, different things, like maybe I can run a TCP dump and figure out what's running, like just the very basics to figure out what's going in, what's coming out, and where the traffic is stopping. And then you can go to your networking team and it's like, hey, so I have this service running and I'm not able to get to this other service. I ran these couple of tests. This is the results that I'm getting. Can you help me? And you've done most of the legwork. And the network engineering can look at that and say, oh, well, because we don't have a route set up over there because we didn't know that was a thing that needed to be done or whatever. Being
able to go to your network team and talk intelligently is going to go leaps and bounds, A, for your credibility, and B, for the speed at which you're going to be able to troubleshoot problems and get resolutions.
Yeah, I mean that sort of goes for any group that you're going to talk to in your job, like being able to talk to them sort of on their level.
You can't expect the sysadmin to understand the inner workings of human resources, right? There's certain gaps you just can't bridge.
Who wants to go talk to marketing or sales? I mean,
right.
I mean, there are limits, guys. So,
but from a technology perspective, I mean, if you're a system administrator, you're a technology person. You should be able to learn this stuff, or at least get a grasp on it.
Right. Yeah, passing knowledge gets you pretty far. So
I think we've dove pretty deeply into a rabbit hole off of the Docker networking talk.
But it was fun.
It was fun. And I mean, the podcast was going to be short if we didn't do that. We're probably up to an hour and a half at this point, which is about par.
Hey, we're doing pretty good for like, hey, you want to do like a half-hour podcast?
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of how we started, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much.
Maybe someday, maybe when we hit a year, we'll have like a nostalgia podcast where we talk about that moment that I sent you that Slack message that said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And you're like, with who?" I'm like, no, start, like, make a podcast.
Oh. Yeah, and then you add it to the work I do every week.
Yeah, well,
It's fun,
this is
It's
fun stuff. Fun stuff. And we'll get to be part of all the podcast parties that may or may not exist at conferences.
Hey, free booze is free booze.
I've heard rumors that there are such things. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes. So, where can people find you?
Right. Where can you find us? That's literally in the show notes. Good job. Nice prompt.
It was a transition.
Transition. Oh, wait. Should I play the music that you can't hear?
No, don't play the music that nobody can hear.
That nobody can hear. All right. Next time I'll play the music. All right. So if you want to find us on the web, ironsysadmin.com will get you to my website, which also hosts the podcast. I still haven't broken that off yet. Someday. I promise. You can give us money if you feel like you need to, which, again, thank you to everyone who has given us money. It's very, very useful.
Thank you.
I now actually have like legitimate expenses for the podcast because we're using Amazon to host all the episodes. Maybe you've noticed they download faster. Maybe you've noticed that I'm not screaming every time people download the podcast, the day after podcast release, because all of my bandwidth is sucked up.
Now so he just screams at me.
Yeah. Now you can go to patreon.com/ironsysadmin and help us recoup some of those costs. There's nothing too crazy at the moment. And to be honest, the amount of patrons we have is covering the expenses we have. So that's awesome. And Jason is dropping things, making lots of noise.
Clearly, things are falling off the wall.
Oh, awesome. Maybe you should think.
It's an exciting podcast today.
That house purchase.
Oh, boy. Okay. I'm going to fix that later.
All right. So you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ironsysadmin. Also, twitter.com/ironsysadmin. If you'd like to look us up on Twitter, I will be completely blunt. I am more active on Twitter than I am on Facebook for the podcast.
As it should be.
As it should be. YouTube. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you can actually watch us do this thing on Monday nights, every other Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. That
would be sometime. That would be roughly 9 p.m.
Sometime after 9 p.m. Eastern. We're working on that. ironsysadmin/YouTube will redirect you to the YouTube channel because we don't have enough followers yet or subscribers yet to rename our channel. And of course, Apple iTunes, you can find us in the usual ways just by searching for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. And we're also on Stitcher because, where else would you put a podcast, right?
Well, so, I kind of named a bunch of other places, so.
Did I? No, I didn't.
It's all over the place.
All over
you can find me at Xenophage. And,
yes.
For that Patreon donor, he knows how to spell it.
Yeah, right. There is still a Patreon reward level at which you will get the proper spelling of Jason's Twitter handle, which does not start with a Z, even though it sounds like it does.
Nope, it doesn't.
Nope. And you can find me on Twitter at Gangriff. I don't think I need to spell that, but I guess I could, but I won't. Ha! And stickers soon. We already talked about that.
Yeah, stickers. We'll get them.
All right. So I guess that's it. Good night, everybody, and thanks for listening. I'm totally going to play the outro, and Jason won't know it. Okay, the outro's over.
Oh, good. But we're still live. Hello.
We are
people
still
that
live.
Are out there.
So I think the only person who was listening to us live has gone to bed, like any sensible person would have by now. But thank you, Digital FX, for chatting with us. That was
Let me
fun.
go ahead and switch my microphone so I can put this thing away.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cut off the broadcast now. Thanks, anybody who has decided to watch this crapshoot on YouTube. Thanks for listening, guys.
That is the weirdest thing. I changed my microphone and my headphones get louder. I don't understand.
That is weird. All right. Broadcast is stopping now.